Favor, volte para os seus lugares, como estamos prestes a começar. Ladies and gentlemen, we kindly ask you to direct yourselves to your seats as we are about to start. Damas y caballeros, por favor, si pueden dirigirse a sus asientos que vamos a empezar. Prezados participantes, por favor, volte para os seus lugares como estamos prestes a começar. Ladies and gentlemen, we kindly ask you to direct yourselves to your seats as we are about to start. Damas y caballeros, por favor, regresen a sus asientos que vamos a empezar. Prezados participantes, por favor, volte para os seus lugares, como estamos prestes a começar.
Hey. Hey.
Ladies and gentlemen, we ask that you please take your seats so that we may continue with the program. Ladies and gentlemen, we ask that you please take your seats so that we may continue with the program. Thank you. Española, por favor. Portuguesa, por favor.
Prezados participantes, tomem seus lugares como estamos prestes a começar. Damas y caballeros, por favor, tomen sus asientos que vamos a empezar.
Will the staff of AMA please ask the participants in the foyer to enter the ballroom? AMA staff, please assist in having the participants enter the ballroom. We have scheduled a lunch break for 1.5 hours, which will allow for ample opportunity for all of you to network and to get to know each other better. And we would greatly appreciate your cooperation in taking your seats now so that we may continue with the program. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call the next speaker to the podium, so if you would please take your seats. I know. Thank you so much. Thank you. If those of you that are clustered at the doorway, if you would please take your seats, we will continue. We are very excited that there will be a signing ceremony of a memorandum of understanding, and our Prime Minister, Mike Amon, will explain a little bit more about this MOU. Prime Minister?
Friends, ladies and gentlemen, we want this conference not only to be of profound reflection and building friendship for the future, but also building immediate partnership so we could start effectively today with many of our purposes. So we made it a point that during this conference, we have done a lot of work in advance that we could realize some partnerships agreement already during this conference. And one of the important partnership agreements that we will be signing today, a MOU, is a MOU between the government of Aruba, Shell, GasUnie, Anthony Vader, and the utilities company of Aruba. And the purpose of this MOU is to engage in a partnership where Shell, GasUnie, Anthony Vader, and utilities and Aruba would work together on the transition from fuel oil to LNG, which will lower our emission and is a great transitional fuel towards total sustainability. And we will not only be working on this for Aruba, but from this partnership, and that's also the purpose of this partnership, we will develop a center of excellence that we could also provide the same knowledge to other countries and islands that want to make the same transition to LNG, which will lower emission drastically in all parts of the world. As you know, the utilization of fuel oil to produce energy is the common fuel that's being used definitely in the Caribbean, and it creates a lot of emission, and the transition to LNG would lower this drastically. So this would be a great first step together with all our alternative energy steps that we are taking towards total sustainability and 100% stop of CO2 emissions. So I would like to ask a hand of applause for Shell, for GasUnie, for Anthony Vader, for utilities and the government of Aruba, and we will start signing.
We would now like to invite Prime Minister Ayman and our Minister of Finance, Minister de Mesa, to sign. Our Prime Minister and Minister de Mesa will be signing on behalf of the government of Aruba. Thank you. On behalf of Utilities Aruba, we would like to ask Mr. Hooverts, and on behalf of Shell Gas and Power Developments, we would like to ask Mrs. Van Loan to please sign. Thank you. And on behalf of Anthony Vader LNG Shipping, we would like to ask Mr. Van der Weerthof to please come up and sign. And on behalf of NV Nederlandse GasUnie, Mr. Kager. And for such a momentous occasion, we must take a moment for a group photo. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. During the first course of the morning, or the first part of our morning session, we focus mainly on Aruba as gateway. For this next session, our focus will be on the opportunities triangle between Latin America, Aruba, and Europe. This leads me to introducing our next speaker. He is not a first-time visitor to our country, to Aruba. He is the current president of Carbon War Room. After a successful business career and serving as Minister of State, Mr. Jose Maria Figueres was elected president of Costa Rica at the very young age of 39, I may add. As president, he created a comprehensive national development strategy based on the tenets of sustainability, sound economics, investment in human development, and technology work, which he continued after leaving government by helping create and then leading the United Nations ICT Task Force as its first chairperson. Mr. Figueres was the first person to become CEO of the World Economic Forum, where he strengthened global corporate ties to social and governmental sectors. Mr. Figueres is currently the president of the Carbon War Room, as I mentioned, and Carbon War Room implements entrepreneurial, market-driven solutions to reduce carbon emissions at the gigaton level and also to mitigate climate change. Please help me in welcoming to the stage Mr. Jose Maria Figueres.
Mr. Prime Minister, members of Parliament, Mr. Jean-Peter Balkenende, amigas y amigos embajadores, queridas y queridos compañeros de estas latitudes y longitudes. I would also like to begin by saying welcome to Aruba. When it comes to thought leadership, this place is big. And so therefore, a more appropriate welcome would be welcome to the continent of Aruba that is 35 kilometers north of the other continent of South America. For a world that is short on vision and leadership, Aruba is long on both. Europe meets America is not only a wonderful, but also a feasible and doable concept. And congratulations, Mr. Prime Minister, for your vision and for your courage in driving the change. I also come from a small nation, and I'm absolutely convinced that in today's world, with all of the changes that Lawrence John Brinkhorst mentioned about today's world, small countries and large countries, but particularly small nations that do not have a strategy to extract value out of globalization, are countries from which globalization is going to extract everything and leave nothing with. And so the articulation of a strategy for Aruba as it goes forward is, of course, of primordial interest. Costa Rica has transitioned from agriculture to tourism to branding and coining the word ecotourism, which today is the second largest income in our nation and the first job creator in rural areas, and then moved on to high tech, where today we have over 250 corporations, hardware, software, components that have become the #1 economic activity for the country. Michelle, this morning, our Minister of Economics shared with us how Aruba has transitioned from agriculture and oil to tourism and to now putting forward the concept in which they are inviting all of us to participate in, which is the overarching principle of organizing development along the lines of what has been called a green gateway. A green gateway is not only what Aruba can lead us with, a green gateway is what the world needs as we transition from the last 200 years of economic activity, which started with the steam engine, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, but which today is running out of steam and needs a transition to a low-carbon economy. That is the future. That's where we're going to create the jobs and the opportunities for the future. At the Carbon War Room, amigas y amigos, we feel both proud and privileged. First, to be in a partnership with TNO. And I want to recognize Mart van Bracht and John Ebbing. Where are you? John, I see you right here. Mart, thank you for being here with us this morning. We're proud and privileged, together with our TNO partners, to be a part of this journey towards a low-carbon economy. Our mission within the Carbon War Room is to identify those sectors of the global economy where we can reduce carbon emissions at the gigaton scale in a profitable way. Gigaton, because scale is important if we are to change the adversity of climate, and profitable because if it's not profitable and we don't make it a viable business opportunity, we will not be able to attract the capital and the leadership and the entrepreneurship and the skills that many of you here today in the private sector bring to everything that you want to accomplish. So shipping, for example, one of our operations, is something where we have already achieved a good amount of progress. There are about 100,000 ships out there sailing the world's oceans and hauling the world's cargo. And if you aggregated the carbon emissions of these ships, they would be the equivalent of the 6th largest nation emitter, somewhere between Japan and Germany. Those ships go up on a dry dock every 5 years to be retrofitted. And if you take advantage of that opportunity to deploy on them between 6 to 10 technologies in a cost of between $1.5 to $2.5 million, those ships roll off the dry dock consuming between 20 and 30% less fuel, 20-30% cost savings, and 20 or 30% less carbon emissions. And that is the low-hanging fruit which we can all participate in harvesting as we move into low carbon. Another one of our operations is our Smart Island Economies operation, where Aruba is the first island that we are working with to transition towards an end goal of being off fossil fuels. And there are many things that can be worked on in that context here, which are, again, opportunities for the private sector. Minister Mike de Mesa talked about some of these this morning. And you can always tell the seriousness of a country when they're talking about sustainability by whether it is the Minister of the Environment that talks sustainability, or it is also the Minister of Finance that talks sustainability. In this, Aruba is also an example. And to hear of the very holistic way in the finances of this country are being organized around sending markets correct signals with respect to the types of investments that we want in this country is, of course, a confirmation of the seriousness of the intent of this country. Let me mention but a few of these opportunities that lie in this particular sector. Demand-side management, of which Mike talked about here this morning. Low-hanging fruit. 20 to 25% of our energy consumption could be reduced by an attitude and a change in behaviors at the household level and an equivalent savings. With 30 megas of wind and 24 additional that are coming up over the radar screen because of what the government is doing, that takes us a long way. With 3 and a bit megas of solar that will be covering the roof out at the airport, and another perhaps 10 megas of decentralized generation, taking advantage of the fact that price of photovoltaics has been coming down 10, 15% on a yearly basis over the last 4 or 5 years, that goes a long way also in that respect. And with another 6 to 8 as a potential megas as a potential in biomass, that puts Aruba already on a very steady path towards sustainability from an energy perspective. In all of these elements that I have mentioned, there are opportunities for job creation in a country where job creation is important and relevant today. Sustainability goes further than that. On this island, which is 30 kilometers long, 10 kilometers wide, approximately 50,000 vehicles, each vehicle is today, on average, being used for about 10,000 miles. That's a lot. There are opportunities there in the transport sector as well, and that takes us back into the importance of urban planning as we look into the Green Gateway as an organizing concept for how we want to develop into the future. But in this world, amigas y amigos, small is also beautiful. And so being a thought leadership continent, but geographically smaller, is a tremendous advantage in terms of bringing all of these changes to the forefront and being able to act on them as is being done today. A green gateway is also a great gateway into this additional competitive cluster of Europe meets America. And I see that from a Latin American perspective as a tremendous opportunity, not only for European medium and smaller sized companies that by Latin American standards would still be very large corporations, to come much closer to Latin America and participate in the boom and the growth and the future of Latin America, which Mr. Smits talked about here this morning. But this is also an important opportunity for Latin American and Central American companies that don't have the wherewithal on their own to explore European markets for their export-driven products, to participate and learn about them from Aruba. So it is very much at least a three-way hub. Aruba already has a pre-clearing of passengers with the United States. Imagine Aruba innovating again tomorrow with a pre-clearing of merchandise and goods. And imagine that happening also in the other direction of the European Union. Those are the things that are possible in the world of today, and that would give this hub a tremendous amount of additional leverage. Information flows and finances to aid and help the exchange of trade would go a long way towards a consolidation of this hub. And thinking of new clusters of competitiveness that would be terrific add-ons to what you have already done would be another way to consolidate a three-way hub on Aruba. I will in that respect share two examples. Between 2.5 and 3.5 hours away by plane, you have 3 million North Americans that are all in need of affordable health care. Health tourism and traveling for non-emergency medical procedures is a great cluster and a tremendous add-on to your tourism cluster. Persons that travel for medical tourism end up spending on average between $7,000 and $9,000 on their voyage, and that goes a lot further than what the normal tourist is spending in Aruba or in our countries, for that matter of fact. And there is the possibility here to create such a hub of excellence, which would come alongside a tremendous amount of investment, the creation of more qualified opportunities in the medical field, and a center of attraction for excellence in this competency. Another cluster where I believe Aruba has important competitive advantages in this three-way hub is in the field of education. The Erasmus program allows European students to travel within European nations to receive 1 year of their education when they're in the universities. An extension of the Erasmus program into Aruba and the opening up of a similar program with leading universities in the United States could easily have 40, 50,000 students per year living in Aruba with Aruban families, providing an additional income to each one of those families where they're renting a room or a small apartment, and creating the wherewithal and the hub around which to receive investments in the field of education. When we power that up with renewable energies, the direction in which this country is moving, and we have a vision that shows a way of where we want to go, Aruba can effectively be a leader in the transformation, not only to a low-carbon economy, but to better and more meaningful livelihoods. I believe that I speak for all of us when we heard the Prime Minister this morning in his sharing of his vision bring this all back down to the well-being of people. And that's where it makes such a dramatic and such an important difference. At the end of the day, this is not about only numbers, or only creating jobs, or only creating opportunities, or only positioning Aruba as the thought leader it already is in a world that needs clarity with respect to hope, the future, and even optimism. It is about the livelihoods that we create, the families of today and of the future, and what we leave to the next generations. And there's a tremendous opportunity for leadership, amigas y amigos. We are truly privileged to be living the times in which we live. They are challenging. They are times of tremendous change, but they are also times on which, the one hand, we have a tremendous amount of technology, and on the other hand, a good amount of economic wherewithal. Bringing those two together with leadership and with our actions will go a long way to fulfilling the dreams of this green gateway of the future of Aruba and of its thought leadership with respect to then what other nations in the world can also aspire to. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros, amigas y amigos. Yo espero que hagan muy buenos negocios durante estos días que están por acá y que nos sigamos viendo en estas oportunidades tan lindas que nos brinda este lindo país. Que Dios los bendiga.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for those words. Our next speaker is Mr. Javier Humberto Gamboa Benavides. He is the Chief Trade Negotiator for the Ministry of Commerce, Industry, and Tourism for the country of Colombia. He is the head of the negotiating team of Colombia, responsible for negotiations of free trade in that country, and he is currently leading the negotiations of Colombia's FTAs with Korea, Turkey, Costa Rica, Israel, and Panama. Please help me to welcome Mr. Javier Gamboa to the stage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Prime Minister, all the other distinguished members of the Aruban government, and the other guests in this landmark business conference that I would say it couldn't be in a more opportune time, as I hope I will show you during my remarks. Because the topic assigned to me is very wide, and the time is short, I will start now with the substance of my presentation. As we all know, these have been tough times for the global economy. The combination of the unsolved euro crisis, the weak recovery of the US economy from the so-called Great Recession in 2008, and the slowing down of the Chinese economy have combined to create a difficult situation that a single region in the world could say is totally shielded from its negative effects. However, Latin America has become kind of a safe haven, we say, and a growth engine for what we used to call the Western world. If you see the slide, the graphics projected, this is the growth of the GDP of 2012, except maybe for Brazil and Argentina. The rest of the Latin American countries have a very good year, and if you take into account that for most of our Latin American countries, the US and the EU is either the number one or number two source of imports, exports, and investment, you would understand that something really different has going on in this region during the last decade. And if you take the whole decade, all the countries, practically without exception, perform very well indeed. If I'm going to explain what's going on from a trade policymaker perspective from one Latin American country, obviously I came from the Latin American country with the biggest community in Aruba, precisely, Colombia. I will start to talk about the regional historic trends and then the new trends in the region. Obviously, to talk about Latin America as a single region is difficult because there are different trends. Historically, there has been three main blocks: the Mercosur countries, the Andean community countries, and the Central American Common Market countries, and two independent countries that are pursued historically an independent way of integrated into the world, Mexico and Chile. Indeed, those two countries have been very successful doing that. Mexico is the country with more FTA trading partners in the world, and Chile is the country with more FTA agreements in the whole world. But there are now different trends, indeed, as just I mentioned. There are differences. For example, we know that Venezuela moved from the Andean community to the Mercosur now. That's why I would like to take this opportunity to talk about what, in my opinion, is the most important initiative in the Americas from an integration point of view in decades, maybe. It's the creation of the Pacific Alliance. The founding country members are Colombia, Chile, Mexico, and Peru. They have started a bloc that I would say is different. They have many elements in common. If you take these countries together, they already will be the number 8 economy in the world. They receive more than 30% of the trade of the whole region, even including Brazil, which we know that because of its size weighs a lot, and more than 25% of the all foreign direct investment. Those countries are countries that have many elements in common. Those are countries that are pro-business, pro-market economies, pro-foreign direct investment with commitment with the liberal democracy. And this goes beyond an FTA agreement. That's the importance that I would like to highlight today. Indeed, it's a requirement to be part of the Pacific Alliance to have agreements with every single member of the alliance, which means that there are 6 agreements between them, and is the reason why, for example, Costa Rica negotiated a free trade agreement that we just finished 2 months ago. Is a deep integration area that is moving to a kind of common market. I wouldn't say exactly technically a common market because it's not going to be custom units, for example, but is with the idea of deepening the movement, the free movement of people, of capital, services, and the likes. Indeed, if it's now being created, already Mexico eliminated the visa requirements to Colombians and Peruvians, and there is also elements of trade and custom facilitation. For example, for the likes that are not experts on trade, I would say that the fact that Colombia has agreement with Peru and Peru with Mexico, it doesn't mean that you could take an input from Peru, transform it in Colombia, and then export with preferential margin to Mexico. But now with this kind of harmonizing and allowing the accumulation of rules of origin in order to export to these countries, the business community, could do that in all of these countries. And as I say, it goes beyond the trade in goods. It includes services, investment, even our stock exchange markets are integrating through the so-called MILA, the Mercado Integrado de Latinoamérica, Latin American Integrated Stock Exchange Market. The effect of this new trend is clear if you see what has going on around the world with the Pacific Alliance. Indeed, so far 9 countries have become official, formal observers of the process. Countries like Panama, Costa Rica, Spain, Australia, New Zealand, Uruguay, Canada, Japan, and Guatemala. Indeed, in 17 days, it will be a summit in Cali, the 3rd largest city of Colombia, with the presence of 10 heads of state and government, including the likes of President Mariano Rajoy from Spain or Prime Minister Stephen Harper from Canada. And currently, Costa Rica and Panama are also candidates to be full members of the Pacific Alliance. And this is happening exactly in the same moment that the relationship between Latin American countries and the European Union is getting to a whole new level. Obviously, we all know that Europe is very important in economic terms for Latin America. It's the first outside investor in Latin America. It's the 3rd outside destination and of Latin American exports and imports. But apart from the two first agreements, the agreement with Mexico, the FTA, the association agreement with Mexico in 2000, and the Chilean agreement with the Europeans in 2003, this is the year, that's what I say, that this conference couldn't be in a better moment, when the agreements with Central American countries, with Peru, and with Colombia will enter into force. Yes, the relationship between both countries in terms of trade, investment, and cooperation between the two blocks will get another level, and I can announce that hopefully this month our Congress, the Colombian Congress, will approve the agreement with the European Union. It was already approved by the European Parliament last year, clearly in the way to this entry into force in some moment this year. But obviously, this goes far beyond the booming of Latin America, goes far beyond just the trade policy. I would like to call about what some analysts call the new normal of Latin America, which I will summarize in low vulnerability and high growth for the future. There are some elements like institutional stability in most of the countries, lower economic and fiscal vulnerability. I always been amazed for the fact that were the Latin American countries the ones who used to have financial crisis, not the US or the EU, but times have changed. We learned our lesson last century. Back in reform processes and a commitment to a market economy. At the same time, we still have population growth, we still have, as you could see, a very young population, greater financial deepness, increased GDP per capita that creates a whole new middle class of consumers for business opportunities, and high urbanization rates to help to create also more potential because of the cluster efficiencies of the urbanization. Obviously, some challenges remain. Yes, if you take a look at the Global Competitiveness Index, you will see that Latin American countries in general need to close gap in many areas, particularly, I would say, in areas such as infrastructure, education quality, and innovation. But here, the news are also good for European investors, because as we heard this morning, these are areas where Europeans have leadership and could help a lot in a win-win relationship. Obviously, I cannot finish my remark without talking a little bit about Colombia. We understand that apart from creating the hub of agreements to open new markets and to expose our markets gradually to more competition, we need to enhance our competitiveness. This is why we started even from two governments ago, a national competitiveness program, which is a public-private effort with two main components. On the one side, tackling the structural across-the-border barriers like infrastructure, which has been our, I would say, biggest headache for our economic growth, trade facilitation, innovation, and human resource quality. And at the same time, we realized that we need to work in the subsector, at the subsector level of bottlenecks, and that's why we are promoting and tackling those barriers in specific sectors, some traditional, some emerging, such as outsourcing and offshoring, software, cosmetic, personal care products, health, tourism, textiles and clothing, electricity, auto parts, printing, and graphic arts. And the other good news that I could tell you today is that precisely most of these areas will be the substance of the Memorandum of Understanding that will sign the government of Aruba and the government of Colombia at the end of this month. Finally, for concluding my remarks, I will summarize the consolidation of a middle class and the institutional reforms in most of the Latin American countries set a positive tone for Latin American economies. We have a good present, and I would say a better future without any doubt. Economic integration initiatives such as the Pacific Alliance will also improve the business environment and increase Latin American growth potential. And as I said before, this is the right time to strengthen links between EU and Latin America. This will help the EU get back to its growth. Now more than ever, the EU needs Latin America, and Latin America, and it will help Latin America to consolidate its achievement. And there is no better place in the world to take advantage of this moment and these opportunities than Aruba, being a little bit of Europe, just a few miles off the South American coast. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for that. And we would not expect you to leave the stage without telling us a little bit about Colombia. Well, our next speaker's name has been mentioned already by a few of the previous speakers. He is Professor Jan Peter Balkenende. He is the Professor of Governance, Institutions, and Internationalization at Erasmus University in Rotterdam. He is also a partner at Ernst & Young. Professor Balkenende is a former Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, where he served 4 terms in this important role. Under his leadership, many reforms in the fields of social security, pre-pension facilities, public health, and deregulation were achieved. Professor Balkenende has received 5 honorary doctorates and has written many books and articles. He is the author of many policy documents on economic growth, social security, fiscal policy, poverty, development cooperation, and innovation. Please welcome to the stage Professor Balkenende.
Madam Moderator, thank you very much for the introduction. Kissing a moderator, that's a new experience in my life. I will never forget you. Prime Minister, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be back on Aruba. It's always good to be here. Because of the weather. We had a long and cold winter in the Netherlands. It's good to be here because of the people. That has to do with the friendship and the great atmosphere. And it's good to be on Aruba because of its dynamics. And what you're doing to consider yourself as a sustainable island, that really gives perspective. And therefore it's really good to be here. And Prime Minister, you underlined the fact that Aruba is part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And last week we had a very important event in the Netherlands, Queen's Day. The last Queen's Day, now we have King's Day. And King Willem-Alexander took over the responsibility of his mother, Queen Beatrix, now Princess Beatrix. And it was a great manifestation. And it's good to underline that the royal family, King Willem-Alexander and his wife, Queen Maxima, they have the Dutch Isles in the Caribbean in their hearts and minds, and you can count on that. And when I make a connection between Aruba and the royal house, the House of Orange-Nassau, then you can see that sustainability is high on the agenda. King Willem-Alexander, he's a recognized specialist in the sphere of water and water management. And Queen Maxima, she's doing fantastic work in the sphere of microfinance. And it's good to underline that. I think for Argentina it's a great time. You have the soccer player Messi, you have the Pope, and now a Dutch Queen. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to apologize, I do not have slides. I would like to speak about 4 items. 1, the economic opportunities of Latin America. 2, the essential element of sustainability, how to integrate sustainability in business models and business strategies. 3, the role of Aruba. And 4, the necessity to be concrete and to take action. Do you agree? No objections? Well, this was your chance. Thank you very much. First, the economic opportunities of Latin America. As you already heard several times, Ernst & Young, the company where I'm working, did the research for this part of the world. And we discovered in Latin America 4 economic opportunities in any case. And the first is infrastructure. And when you talk about infrastructure, it's about roads, it's about ports, it's about airports. And the fact there are so many infrastructure projects in Latin America says and clarifies that this is a region with a growth potential. That's one. The second thing is energy. And that's not only about oil and gas, it's also about renewables, biofuel, the next generation biofuels. Also that is linked to sustainability. The third component is agribusiness. That's to do with quality of food, supply of food. Also here is a representative from Wageningen University. The Netherlands, we are a small country, 17 million people, but we are the second exporter of agriculture products, and we have the highest productivity. So you can imagine we are very interested in agribusiness developments in Latin America. And the last one, of course, is tourism. A lot of potential is in this part of the world. And when you're analyzing these 4 elements, infrastructure, tourism, agribusiness, and energy, in fact, these 4 developments all are linked with the issue of sustainability. It's good to underline that. And when Mike Eijman is talking about the challenges for Aruba, I think it's important to underline that there are opportunities in the Latin American continent when you talk about these 4 components in relation to sustainability. That brings me to my second point, sustainability. Everybody in the world is talking about sustainability. What is sustainability? Is it about environmental affairs and climate change? Yes, it is. But it's much more than that. Minister Mike de Meza this morning told about energy. It's also part of sustainability. It's also about human rights. It's about community engagement. It's about your relationship with employees. It's about financial sustainability. And it's about integrity and transparency. These are the key elements of sustainability. And wherever you are in the world, sustainability is high on the agenda. Quite recently, I visited South Korea. A former Prime Minister, Han Seung-soo, a Nobel Prize winner, he started with an initiative that's called the Global Green Growth Institute, Green Growth. 2 weeks ago, I was in Japan. When you're talking with business people in Japan, they consider sustainability as a value of the company. And they consider sustainability as a business driver, not a hindrance, a barrier, a limit to doing business, but a business driver. In Singapore, there's an investing company, Temasek, and they started with a stewardship and corporate governance center. And why? I spoke with the director and he said, all our directors are making decisions on investments every day. And all these directors must have the ability to have a connection between sustainability and these decisions on making investments. In Africa, during a long time, Africa was a kind of dark continent. And at this moment, MIT analyzes that in the African continent, you find many companies that are integrating sustainability in their business strategies. The world is changing. You can see it in Europe. In the Netherlands, we have, for example, the Sustainable Trade Initiative, an alliance between governments, businesses, and NGOs, just to talk about the question, how can we improve the production of sugar, cotton, and so on, wood? How to work in the sphere of sustainability. I'm the chairman of the Dutch Sustainable Growth Coalition, a coalition of 8 multinationals that integrate sustainability in their business models. And sometimes you have other experiences. When I started working at EY on the 1st of April 2011, I met Americans and they said, what are you doing now after having been Prime Minister? I said, I'm partner at EY. Oh, that's interesting. And what are you doing? And then I said, I'm partner corporate responsibility. Oh, that's great, the American said. We do a lot in the sphere of corporate responsibility. And my question was, of course, and what are you doing? And then the answer was, we give money to charity. And that's a bit strange because the question is, how do you realize your profits? Because if you're polluting the air and the ground, and you're not taking into account human rights, of course you can give money to charity. But the question is, how are your profits being realized? And that is what people feel today. We will have a world population of 9 billion people in 2050. There's a scarcity of natural resources. We cannot go on with the current production and consumption styles. Everybody knows that. And that's the reason why everywhere in the world people are saying we must put sustainability high on the agenda. We have to integrate sustainability in our business models and business strategies, and we have to be concrete. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a very fundamental issue. What about the role of companies? At the time when I studied in the 70s in the Netherlands, people considered companies to be institutions that had to work for profits and continuity within the limits of society, meaning the regulation of the government. Today, the world has changed. Michael Porter, the famous management guru, said, it is about creating shared value. A company must realize economic value, otherwise you cannot exist, and you must realize social value by addressing the needs and wants from society. We are living in a world of alliances between governments, businesses, knowledge centers. And it is so important to talk about the long term. I think we've made a big mistake in the West. During a rather long time, we only spoke about shareholders' value and revenues in the short term. And I think we have to admit that the financial crisis of 2008 was not only a financial crisis, it was a moral crisis. And today people understand that it's a matter of shareholders' value. You have to take into account all the different actors, investors, governments, NGOs. And it's important to talk about the long term. And that is what you can see in many parts of the world. And I'm happy with this development, that we are talking about doing business in another way, that we are talking about what is essential today. We cannot go on with the current styles of production and consumption. And we have to be creative. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest. We have to speed up developments. In the UK, there's a famous professor, Wayne Visser, with a South African background. And he says, if we analyze the business strategies, we cannot be satisfied at the moment. We have to do much more. He said we must work for a circular economy. We must have a combination of global thinking and acting locally. It's important to be innovative, to be responsive to the needs of society. And he talks in terms of the age of responsibility. I'm happy with these remarks. Sustainability should be high on the agenda. There's not an alternative. Integration of sustainability in business models and business strategies. And that brings me to my third point. And therefore, Mike, I'm so happy with what you're doing. And it's very clear, since 2011, the government of Aruba said, we consider ourselves as a green gateway. Green gateway. And the gateway means that you have the conviction that you're doing the right things and that you're taking into account the hinterland. And of course, Aruba is not a gateway like the port of Rotterdam. That's different. But when you are analyzing what's happening in Latin America, and when you are talking about the profile of this island, then it's interesting to consider the possibilities of a green gateway. And that's what we analyzed. The green gateway means that the Isle of Aruba considers itself indeed as a hub of knowledge, as a hub of potentials, as a hub of connecting businesses from Europe and Latin America. So being a green gateway leads to a new profile for this fantastic isle. That's one. The second point is, if you consider yourself as a green gateway, you must also take up concrete actions. And that's the reason why there's an idea to have a green zone here on Aruba, with new institutions, knowledge centers, startups, even a green World Trade Center. All these are the ideas at the moment. And after the green gateway, after the green zone, then we are talking about which are the sectors in which you can be creative. And of course, that's about technology. That's one. The second is financial intermediation and business integration. That has to do with business models. The third is tourism, and the fourth is logistics. In our report, we are analyzing all these elements, and Caroline Rodenburg, my colleague, she will elaborate on that. And let me be very clear. I'm very happy with the fact that Aruba is in fact taking the lead in this part of the world by considering itself as an isle that strengthens the profile to much more in the sphere of sustainability, to be creative. That's necessary. So you have the connection between the economic opportunities of Latin America. You understand what sustainability is all about, and you have a profile as this country, this part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to my fourth point. Am I in time? Yeah, no problems? Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And I don't receive water from you. No. Never, no. Never give water to speakers, because then they can talk longer and longer. So you all must take care there is a natural limit to speak. Huh? Yeah, great, thanks. My fourth point. When you are convinced that sustainability is in fact the solution for a lot of issues in the world of today and tomorrow, then it is about being honest, being fair, and being very concrete. And we can see many discussions in the world. Yesterday we had ambassadors conference with a lot of Dutch ambassadors. It was a fantastic meeting. And then we referred to Stiglitz, a Nobel Prize winner, an economist. And he said we have to rethink the definition of the gross domestic product. In my country, there are business people who are saying we have to reconsider the definition of the value of a company. Because if we do not then take into account the issue of sustainability, then it's not the real value. And there's an initiative in my country that's called true pricing. Because if you're not taking into account all the different elements in the price of a product, that means that you are transferring responsibilities to others or to next generations. That's what you can see. Companies are talking about sustainability, but the question is, of course, what does it really mean for your key performance indicators? When you say we want to bring down CO2 emissions, the question is, of course, what are you doing concretely? When you talk about energy efficiency, the question is, what are you doing? And I can give many other examples. Key performance indicators. And then there's the analysis of each product that's called life cycle analysis, and that has to do with the fact what has been the role of sustainability in the production of goods and deliverance of services. And the last point, that's what we call integrated reporting. Accountants are not only there for financial reporting and assurance on that, to check the financial figures, but they also have the task to talk about social reporting. And that will be high on the agenda. And when we talk about Aruba, with your role as Green Gateway, there's the general concept of the Green Gateway. There's the idea of a green zone. We identified 4 sectors. And we also mentioned many concrete examples, but now it's time to take action, to say what is necessary today. So after the first phase, and we are in it now, it's now a matter of being concrete, deliver the right proposals, and to go on, to work on the follow-up. And Prime Minister, you have a great team of ministers. We started this morning with Michel Hooijboer. When you talked about the profile of this island, there was a very good example of what should be done. So now it's a matter of being concrete, take the right actions. And therefore, Mike, I think your isle deserves the support of everyone. Because what you're doing is not only the profile of Aruba, it's much more than that. You are talking about issues that have the highest importance. It's about working on a better world. It is a matter of how can we create circumstances that the economic performance is being done in another way. What is our role towards our children and grandchildren, towards the next generations? The question is, do we take seriously enough what should be high on the agenda? And it's exactly what you're doing. I was really impressed by what you said. We saw Al Gore, and I have the same conviction. We are running out of time. It's very unfortunately that Wubbo Ockels could not speak here at this conference. And when you speak with astronauts, Wubbo Ockels, André Kuipers and all the other ones, they've been in space. And they say, when you're in space and you see the Earth, that's fantastic. But in essence, they realize you have the ozone around it, and if that would disappear, we can forget everything, and nobody can help us. And that conviction is really increasing. And in fact, what you're doing here in Aruba is being aware of the fact that we must take action. We cannot wait longer. It's all about working for a better society. It is about a sustainable world. And that was good, Mike, that you're not only talking about economic profile of Aruba, it's also about the quality of life of people. That's the reason why you talk about communitarianism. What can people mean for each other? That's the definition, as a Christian Democrat, as you said this morning, what is a human being? Ladies and gentlemen, it is fantastic to be on Aruba. As I said, the weather is nice, the people are great, but maybe that's the most important thing. You are an example of dynamics that is needed so much today. Aruba, a green gateway, a fantastic area in this part of the world that takes its responsibility for doing the right things in the 21st century. I think Aruba deserves our support. I wish you all the best as entrepreneurs to work together. I really hope this will be a very good conference, and it's an honor to be here with you. Thank you very much.
Well, you can always tell when a speaker is passionate about his or her subject. We truly enjoyed what you just shared with us, Professor Balkenende. Thank you for that. We understand that there are some folks that are concerned about the weather and tonight's Europe Meets America's party. We want you to know that the party will still go on, good weather or not, at 7 p.m. tonight around the pool. Please come casually dressed and comfortable and ready to enjoy yourselves. Our next speaker and last speaker before we break for lunch will be Mrs. Caroline Rodenberg. Mrs. Rodenberg is the senior manager with Ernst & Young Real Estate Advisory Services in Amsterdam, and she leads a team of international location advisory consultants that are specialized in corporate relocation and market entry strategies. She is an expert in the field of cross-border corporate relocation strategies, as well as site selection and location, investment climate studies. Mrs. Rodenberg has worked for clients in various geographies in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, as well as the United States of America. She has advised several governments across the globe on national, regional, and local investment promotion strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Caroline Rodenberg.
Prime Minister, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to be able to share with you today the results of our strategic investigation into the future potential of Aruba. What I will do to you is take you through the analysis, but don't worry, just briefly. I will first introduce the strategic investigation, then tell you something about the market analysis, because we studied just a few countries, and of course then go into more detail into the opportunities for Aruba, and finalize with the strategy for the development of the Green Gateway. The question which was asked to us was, how can Aruba, as part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, position itself in the short and medium term as an economic gateway between Latin America and Europe, and vice versa? Well, that question is a clear question, but there's one element in that question that's very important, and that is, what is actually the definition of a gateway? A gateway is actually a city or a region that, due to its prosperous geographical location, can act as a point of entry for material products, information, knowledge, and also people. So it's not just about flows of goods, which is often thought, but it's also about flows of information and people, which is very important, to a large hinterland. And again, very important, in order to be able to function as a gateway, you need to have a material and institutional infrastructure to support that gateway function. Then, of course, you start an investigation like this with the question, why Aruba? What is the unique position of Aruba that helps the island to become an important gateway between those large markets? Well, first of all, Aruba has strong economic ties with the Netherlands for over 200 years already. It's part of the kingdom. And because of that, it can make use of the network of embassies and consulates in both Latin America and the European Union. The historical relationships with Latin America, which allows them to be like an intermediary between the Netherlands and Latin America, because they understand the culture. They are in the region. And the combination of Aruba and the Netherlands brings actually a unique proposition, which is beneficial for both the Netherlands and the EU, and Aruba and Latin America. In the market analysis, we studied not all of Europe, not all of Latin America. That would have been impossible, so we focused on a couple of countries. On the European side, we focused on the Netherlands. On the Latin America side, we focused on Brazil, Colombia, and Panama. What we did is actually looked into the future potential of these countries. What do we see as the big opportunities for the next decades to happen in Latin America, where Aruba can play an important role and build upon? What you then find is a couple of important sectors. As my colleague Mr. Balkenende already told you, infrastructure is one of those. I just mentioned a few of examples on my slides, which I'm sure many of you will recognize. Brazil, for example, has plans to build over 800 airports in the next couple of years, or decades, I should probably say. Colombia is also focusing on infrastructure, water infrastructure, building of airports, ports. Panama is planning to further expand the Colón Free Zone, so huge plans are there. Another sector is oil and gas, and many Latin American countries have natural resources, which are very important and which bring them money. So they're focusing on further developing those sectors as well. And then already mentioned as well the agribusiness. And there's a lot of agriculture in Latin America, which is not used to its full potential yet, so there's an opportunity as well. And then tourism. I think a good example, Panama built 10,000 hotel rooms over the last 3 years, which is a huge amount. And those are the examples that actually bring the ideas on where Aruba could focus for the next years. If you then look at the other side of the ocean, to the Netherlands, what is the connection between those two world regions and the opportunities? Well, the Netherlands is very well known for its water management, its expertise on infrastructure related to water. Also on energy. And we have a lot of expertise in solar energy, wind energy, but also the agri-food sector. As already mentioned, Wageningen University, one of the famous universities with a lot of excellent people knowing many different things about agri-food. So actually, those are the ideas that connect two continents. A lot of knowledge in the Netherlands, a lot of opportunities in Latin America, Aruba in the middle. So which opportunities did we identify? First of all, I want to explain this picture to make sure that we all are at the same page. What you see is on the left-hand side Latin America, on the right-hand side Europe, and Aruba as a green gateway in the middle. In order to take a position as a green gateway, you need to have a location on the island as well where everything can happen, where companies can locate, where synergy can be brought about and things can be strengthened. So you see a gray round in the middle, green zone Aruba, which is a dedicated area where new companies and existing companies, I would like to emphasize that as well, can develop, grow and flourish. So it's very important to have a dedicated area. For the opportunities we identified, they have been mentioned already, but I will mention them again and go into a little bit more detail. The first opportunity is technology, and that's why Also, the idea is there to build a Green World Trade Center in this green zone in Aruba. Other ideas that can be established in this green zone is, for example, a lab and testing location, an incubator center where new companies can start and can grow. A business support center, of course, to help the companies establish there and to connect the companies. A green knowledge and training facility, all kind of knowledge which have to do with green, with sustainability. Not just with technology, but broader than that. Also green project management, for example. The carbon war room can be located in this area as well, very important. And the second opportunity is financial intermediation and business integration. This goes broader than financials itself. For example, business integration is actually where companies act as a product developer to identify opportunities in the market and develop them. But it's also about bringing networks together. Build an information system where the opportunities are in Latin America. Concrete PPP projects, for example, where European companies can jump into and start working on. Integration of the public sector and the private sector. Companies can get access to international networks of governments, but also vice versa. That's a very important opportunity as well. Then tourism has already been discussed. A great initiative, the Bill Merritt Institute, which will come to Aruba. A training facility in hospitality. As you have seen the example of Panama, has built 10,000 hotel rooms over the last 3 years. There's a need for hospitality. Aruba could be a training center to teach people about the experience they have here on the island and bring that to other countries in Latin America. And then finally, logistics. That's why I stress the importance of the definition of a gateway. Because we shouldn't expect Aruba to become a second Panama, a second Rotterdam Harbor. That's just the scale of the island. But there are definitely niches where Aruba could excel. For example, specialized goods, defense materials, aviation materials, goods that need special techniques to be stored. Those could come to Aruba and find a position here. But those are niches that need to be identified further. If you then look at the concrete opportunities in terms of jobs, what could you think of when you look at those 4 opportunities I've just mentioned? In the short term, it's especially matchmaking, consulting, making sure that different networks of different stakeholders get connected. Project management, process management, I mentioned it already. With the number of projects that will be established in the next couple of years in Latin America, all those infrastructure projects, they need to be managed. There are many processes that need to be guided. Education and training, of course, which is where it all starts with. Development of new unique products, because if you have a green zone on Aruba where an incubator center is, there's going to be developed new products which can be exported to different countries. And then at the medium to long term, you see similar opportunities, but also some others. You could also think of capital raising, of course, which becomes important after a couple of years. Certification of green products. Aruba can also play a role, for example, setting up a green exhibition center in the green zone Aruba, where the latest developments in green technology are going to be displayed and presented. Those products could be certified on Aruba as well as an ID. And then the question is, what is the strategy to implement all this? IDs are good, but they need to be implemented and really kicked off. Well, that's a process that needs to be guided and needs to be done step by step. Quite a difficult figure, I guess, but I'm going to explain it to you briefly and logically. You see four circles and some arrows. So it's actually like a logical order of the steps. The first and most important thing is build a green community network. Make sure that you leverage upon existing networks and build new networks so that you create a platform for different stakeholders, both private parties, governments, institutional frameworks. They need to be connected, get to know each other, very important, and that's where the Aruban government has a facilitating role. Once that is done, you start with the green incubator function. That's where the companies can come to the island. The lab and testing park can be set up. Actually, the green network feeds the green incubator function. That's when it can start, if the networks are strong and interconnected. But very important, supporting infrastructure is needed. You need to have the facilities where these companies can establish, where they can grow, can flourish. Then you come to the green integrator function, and that's actually where companies and institutions use ideas and propositions to translate them into concrete projects in the market. So propositions will be translated into projects in the field of finance, for example. Insurance is another example, project management, process management. But also integrate the networks of various stakeholders, build databases. The opportunities in Latin America, connect them to the knowledge there is in Europe. The networks of the private parties on Aruba, the global networks I would even say, connect them or open them up to the Aruban government to make use of the context all around the world to spread the message. And finally, there's the Showcase Sustainable Island. That's actually where green technology can be displayed and can be put into place. But also, as I just said, it's like a logical circle, but there's no necessity at all to wait until the fourth step with the Showcase Sustainable Island, because there are already existing technologies which can easily be implemented on Aruba. You've started with the wind park already, and those are examples of existing technologies, but used under different geographical circumstances, for example. So Aruba shouldn't wait until the fourth step to become a best practice example. That's something they can start with today already, so therefore you see a small arrow the other way around. Then summarizing, the identified opportunities do have potential, and the role for Aruba is mostly to play an intermediary role between those different markets, those different continents, because we can't expect Aruba to start building 800 airports in Brazil. The next steps to take right now is make sure that the Green Zone Aruba is going to be kicked off. It needs to be established and nourished. That's very important. And of course, continue sharing and building the integrated networks of the different stakeholders. And finally, this conference is an excellent example of facilitating matchmaking between different companies, between governments and companies, to make sure that the concrete first projects can be established. And I'm sure that's going to be proven during this conference. Dank u, gracias, thank you, dank u wel.
Thank you so much to Mrs. Rodenberg. A quick housekeeping note. There are 2 vehicles that are parked at the gate of the emergency exit. If we have a major emergency, the emergency vehicles will not be able to get in. Vehicle numbers 26285, 26285, as well as vehicle number 27580, that's 27580. Please remove your vehicles from the emergency exit of the resort. Thank you. So, we've had a wonderful morning of fantastic speakers, and the day has just begun. We are now going to see a short video clip or movie, Aruba movie actually, that was created by Wings Global Media. And after the movie, we will break for lunch. Lunch will be served across the hall. We have a section of the ballroom that is set up for lunch, and there will be a presentation by Web Aruba during the course of lunch. And once that room is filled, there's additional seating for lunch in the Cafe Bachi restaurant, also on this level of the main lobby, as well as in the Pago Pago restaurant. So, maestros, take it away. configurate. Technology at work. Well, in the interest of time, we are not going to have a panel discussion at this time. We do realize that many of you are ready to have some lunch, and we know that the Enya Caribe group as well as WEP are looking forward to presenting to you during the course of your lunch across the hall. So we would like to say bon appetit, and lunch is for 1.5 hours, so we will see you back at that time. Enjoy.
wanna talk about us. I give you my word, I stick to my gut. Believe me when I tell you, baby, that we just begun. You don't understand the full intent of my plan. Baby, I wanna be your sole provider. Oh yeah. And honey, I wanna stay that way for the longest time. Baby, I wanna be your sole provider. And just say you let me, darling, I will. I will. Upside. You don't have to say it, baby. Gonna take some time. You got my heart in the palm of your hand. I swear it's gonna stay there, baby. Give me half a chance. You don't understand the full intent of my plan, baby. I wanna be your sole provider. Oh yeah. Honey, I wanna stay that way for the longest time. Baby, I wanna be your sole provider. And just say you let me, darling, I will. I've been waiting for a long time for somebody like you to give my love, oh my love, day and night. Oh yeah, just say you'll be mine for the rest of your life. Honey, I'll show you why. I wanna be your sole provider. Oh yeah. Wanna be your sole provider. Oh yeah. And honey, I wanna stay that way for the longest time, baby. I wanna be your sole provider. Oh yeah, wanna be your sole provider. Wanna be, I got to be your sole provider. Wanna be gotta be your sole provider. Thank you very much. Thank you. Wow. Well, we're having fun already, aren't we? Thanks so much for coming to see us tonight. These are not make-believe cameras, so feel free to make as much noise as you'd like. It's all okay. We're gonna perform the hits for you. We're gonna perform some classics and
some songs from Vintage, and a lot of songs you know pretty well. So here's one of them right now. You were the cat We're going to go back in time. Want to go back in time? Sounds good, huh? What would you do differently if you could go back in time? I say go back in time. She says anytime. That's like a Dangerfield joke, isn't it? What's going on over there? You remember Timeless, the classics? Good. Because you're going to sing this one to us, okay? You know it, so just take over, do the verse, then the B section, then the chorus, and then the guitar solo. Just take over, feel free. This is from Timeless, the classics. There's a light, a certain kind of light that never shone on me. I want my life to be, to live with you, to live with you. And there's a way. Everybody said to do each and every little thing, but what good does it bring if I ain't got you? If I ain't got you, baby, you don't know what it's like, baby. Somebody the way I love you. In my mind, I see your face again. I know my frame of mind. You ain't got to be so blind. Oh, but I'm blind. I'm so very blind. 'Cause I'm a man. Can't you see what I am? I
to love somebody, really, really love somebody. The way I love you. Thank you. Oh, you see how easy that is when you just take over? We like that. We really do. Yes, you're all coming on the road with us. Yes. Problem is just one bus. You get to know each other, yes. Okay. This is another classic. This is a song that was the second hit I had as an artist, but it was given to us 20 years before that by one of the greatest artists of all time, Otis Redding. Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, then I watch them roll away again. Sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide just roll away. Sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. I left my home in Georgia, headed for the Frisco Bay. I had nothing to live for, looked like nothing gonna come my way. Lord, sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll, just roll away. Sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting precious time. Oh, it looks like nothing's gonna change. Everything, I mean everything remains the same. I won't do what 10 people tell me to do. So I guess I'll remain the same. Sitting here resting my bones. This loneliness won't leave me alone. 2,000 miles I roam just to make this dock my home. Lord, I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll, just roll away. Sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. Oh, Lord, I'm gonna sit on the dock of the bay. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna sit on the dock of the bay, gonna walk the tightrope, just roll. I'm gonna sit, gonna sit, gonna sit and I'm gonna sit, gonna sit, gonna sit. Sitting on the dock of the bay. Thank you.
classics. I'm going to stay with the theme of the classics. You know this one. Don't you ever feel sad? Just lean on me when times are bad. When the day comes and you're down in a river of trouble and about to drown, just hold on. But I'm coming. Just hold on. You know I'm coming. I'm on my way. Your love, you can call. I would be your cover. Don't have to worry, babe, 'cause I'm here. Don't need to suffer, baby, 'cause I'm here. Just hold on, but I'm coming. Just hold on, you know I'm coming. Just hold on, yeah, I'm coming. Just hold on, you know I'm coming. Reach out for me for satisfaction, yeah. Just call my name for quick reaction, baby, baby, yeah. Hold on. Don't you ever feel sad? Just lean on me when times are bad. When the day comes and you're down in a river of trouble and about to drown, just hold on. Oh, I'm coming. Just hold on. You know I'm coming. Just hold on. Oh, I'm coming. Just hold on. You know I'm coming. Just hold on. Hold on. Just hold on. Girl, I'm coming. Just hold on. Hold on. Just hold on. 'Cause I'm coming. That's fun. Thank you. Classics. All right, now we're gonna go further back in time. That sounds good, doesn't it? These are some songs from my latest CD, Vintage. Glad you know them. It's good because you're gonna sing those too and take over as well. So here are a few songs from Vintage. You give your hand to me, and then you say hello, and I can hardly speak. My heart is beating so, and anyone can tell. You think you know me well, but you don't know me. No, you don't know the one who thinks of you at night and longs to kiss your lips, longs to hold you tight. Oh, I'm just a friend. That's all I've ever been. 'Cause you don't know me. Well, I never knew the art of making love, though my heart aches with love for you.
'cause you don't know me. Oh. Afraid and shy, I let my chance go by. Chance that you might love me too. You give your hand to me, then you say goodbye. I watch you walk away beside the lucky guy. Oh, you never know the one who loves you so. 'Cause you don't know me. Oh, no. You don't know me. Thank you. Vintage. Thank you very much. See, it's all right to go back in time, isn't it? Now this is something for Vintage as well, but it's a song that I was singing in clubs when I was 14, 15 years old, and that's over 10 years ago. Why is that so funny? Okay, this is one Gershwin gave us. It's summertime and the living is easy. Love this Summertime. Thank you. Thank you. That's fun. Oh. How about this great band? What's going on up here? Now this one is one of the classics. It's kind of somewhere in between the classics and vintage. And this was, I'm sure, the composer's dreams being realized when this artist made their song a permanent part of our consciousness forever. And that artist was my single greatest influence as a singer growing up. Almost forgot the growing up part. Still working on it. Trying to resist, that is. But just would love to express the tremendous respect and gratitude that I have for this great, great artist, Ray Charles. For all time. The song goes like this. Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Talking about Georgia, I mean Georgia, a song of you comes as sweet Thank you. Thank you, Ray. No, not Ray Finkel. That's fun. That just seems like the further back in time we go, the more fun we're having. I don't know. This next one is one that started when this small company named Disney called. And okay, that one doesn't always go over, does it? They called my manager and they said they were making this movie Hercules. So thought the same thing. Straight to the gym, 7 days a week. Then my manager had to tell me they just wanted me to sing the theme song, and you know, rest is history. I'm glad I did. It was nominated for an Oscar, and I got to perform it at the Oscars, and that was exciting. And the song is. The song is about going for your dreams. It's called Go the Distance. I have often dreamed of a far-off place where a hero's welcome would be waiting for me, where the crowds will cheer when they see my face, and a voice keeps saying, this is where I'm meant to be. I'll be there someday. If I can go the distance, I will find my way. If I can be strong, I know every mile will be worth my while. When I go the I will search this world and I will face its harms until I find my heroes welcome waiting in your arms. Go the distance. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Go the distance. The band is deserting me. But that's all right, because you're here to take over. This is a song that, it's an aria, actually, and it started by an invitation to sing with Luciano Pavarotti. I was basically terrified. That was the experience. Hello back there. Hello. You're not that far away. Hi. Where was I? No idea. So Luciano, I went over to Italy. I went to his hometown in Modena, and it was an exciting but terrifying experience, singing with the greatest voice I think ever. And he was so gracious, and it was such a great experience that I came back to the States and started working on these arias and did a whole album of arias called My Secret Passion, the arias. And thank you. Now, so just help me out and sing along on this one. It's easy. It's in Italian. It's gonna be fun. It's called Nessun Dorma. Nessun dorma, nessun dorma. Tu pura principessa, nella tua fredda stanza, guardi le stelle che tremano d'amore e di speranza. Ma il mio mistero è chiuso in me. Il nome mio nessun saprà. No, no, se la tua bocca chiuderò. Quando la luce splenderà ed il mio bacio scioglierà il silenzio che ti fa mia. This is where you take over. Di trade the world for the good things found. If she's mad, he can't see it. She can do no wrong. He turned his back on his best friend if he puts her down. When a man loves a
Marlon, nós vamos abrir o microfone, speaker rampa fo?
Dankjewel.
Holding on, we know we can weather any storm. And baby, that's what love is all about. Two hearts that find a way somehow to keep the fire burning. Something we could never live without. If it takes forever, we can work it out beyond the shadow of a doubt. Baby, that's what love is all about. As time goes by, we learn to rediscover the reason why this dream of ours survives through thick and thin.
A very good afternoon to our participants. In a few moments, we will start with our afternoon session, so we kindly ask you to direct yourselves to your seats, grab some coffee, and we will be ready for the afternoon session in a couple of minutes. Boa tarde. Pedimos aos nossos participantes para avançar para a sala principal para nossa sessão da tarde. Vamos a começar pronto. Buenas tardes, pedimos a los participantes a que procedan a la sala principal de nuestra sesión de la tarde. Vamos a empezar dentro de unos instantes.
Michelle.